Hello, I'm Josh Barry, and welcome to my TED Talk. Now, the Sherlock Holmes amongst you would already have realised that despite being here today and having written this TED Talk, my words are being read by somebody else. Radio presenter Tom Stroud is my voice today, on my behalf. I have cerebral palsy, which results in unwanted movements and affects my speech, so that I'm not easily understood by an untrained audience. Despite this, I'm a freelance writer and podcaster, with both a degree in script writing and an MA in writing for the media. Everyone listening to this talk will probably already have several ideas about what it's about. Indeed, the nature of a TED Talk deems the subject either motivating or inspiring on a number of different levels. Excuse the generalization, but whenever disabled people are asked to present themselves in this way, the obvious and deliberate response is for the audience to be in awe, inspired, or even educated on how a minority live their lives. But I sit here today and ask you, why does it need to be like this? Why is disability always heavily related to inspiration? If you look at that previous phrase and actually think about the two meanings, it's quite clear that they're very different. Disability and inspiration are not compatible in any way, and arguably they could in fact be the opposite of each other. To inspire, you have to have ability. In fact, all of my inspirations aren't even related to disability, and that might surprise you. Just because you're born a certain way or you look a certain way, it doesn't have to define you as a being. To inspire, you have to have ability, and it's that ability which is the subject for admiration. It's very seldom that people are in awe of what someone hasn't got, as opposed to what they can offer. From the moment I was old enough to have clarity of thought, I was always encouraged to follow my dreams, irrespective of my disability. Not because my parents were out to crusade for disabled rights or get one over on those people who said I would never make much of myself. No, this was something I had to do for me. Mum and Dad wanted me to live with the same expectation and ambition as everyone else. But with it, I also had to cope with the art of failure. That's failure in terms of my life isn't about missing out on a job or opportunity or being unable to reach my targets in order to secure a Christmas bonus. It's the inability to fit in with the mainstream and function as a normal human being. After all, I've spent my whole life living with mainstream expectation and everything that goes with it. However, the support that I need to live my everyday life means that it would be totally unrealistic for me to get a 9-to-5 job. As a human being with mainstream expectations, this is a severe dent to my self-worth and respect. Sometimes it's extremely difficult to see my peers reach levels of professional success which I know I would never achieve. This is a difficult concept to explain, given that I'm here today in front of an audience heralded as a success story, and there will be a lot of people watching this thinking that I am anything but a failure. This is yet another example of perception and how the way people feel inside isn't always projected onto others. In fact, it's only when we are complimented on the things we do that we realise our own self-worth. We almost take this for granted and write it off as a trivial part of everyday life. Yet in realising the significance of our own self-worth, we can then apply this feeling to other parts of our lives. Almost everyone, irrespective of religion, colour, creed, political bias or sporting prowess, will have experienced rejection and isolation. It's a fact of life. I would argue that it's what you do with that feeling that ultimately decides your own path. Are you going to forget about it and carry on regardless? Are you going to let it beat you and then give up? Or are you going to remember that feeling and internalize it and let it form a principle on which you live the rest of your life? There are no wrong answers in life, and that's the magic of our psychology. Everyone has a unique set of principles that they live by, and that will make us all into fascinating and enriching people. I've always loved being with people and hearing their own perceptions on life. Just as I found a way of coping with the barriers that I face, I love hearing about the lives of other people and how they became who they are. Like me, representation plays an important role in their success, but instead of using it to reverse stereotypes, It becomes a tool in separating their performing persona from who they really are. It's a coping mechanism to maintain and preserve their personal relationships. And then it's up to them how they project their character onto the public. Just like Freud's concept of the superego, we all have a shadow side which we refrain from exhibiting. This is frequently the subject of personal shame, which could form the source of mental health issues. Yet if we were to adapt the tools and techniques of a performer and use this embodiment to represent everything that we like about ourselves, then maybe our self-worth would increase. Maybe if this correlation had been realized over half a century ago, we wouldn't have lost so many of our best-loved entertainers to psychologically based illnesses. The concept of identity remains a significant factor in combating this issue, and from a personal perspective, it's one of the main sources of my struggle with understanding my disability. Just like Freud, I feel my mind is broken into two. My superego is gregarious, able, hilarious, laid back and confident, but my mind can be insecure, fragile and vulnerable. Frequently, I wish I could be the guy with the attributes of the former, and to most people I am. Yet in the quiet discourse of my own mind, I know that I fall into the latter category. The key lesson, which I'm still learning, is that these two people aren't mutually exclusive, and through exploring ourselves, they're able to coexist in harmony. In this sense, I guess you could argue that this creates yet another barrier for me to overcome. But personally, I see it just as a byproduct of opting to live in a mainstream society with the same expectations that everyone else is forced to cope with. Fortunately, I found occupation and a sense of validation in my work as a writer and podcaster. Despite it not being able to offer me a financial income, the sense of achievement and fulfillment defies any salary or monetary value. Beyond the Title has been running since 2016 and has allowed me the opportunity to meet and interview some of my heroes from the world of entertainment. My LinkedIn profile might appear extremely thin on the ground, and my business model leaves a lot to be desired. In fact, when I'm surrounded by my able-bodied friendship group and they're bemoaning the working conditions which they experience, I know that there's very little that I'm able to contribute. I don't have a salary, and I have absolutely no experience of the 9-to-5 rat race. But to me, this doesn't matter, because I have my dream job. And when I'm sitting opposite one of my all-time idols, everything else melts into insignificance. I've been very lucky that my disability is occasionally a useful tool in opening up opportunities which otherwise would be harder to gain access to. To think that since 2016, I've been lucky enough to interview 200 of Britain's best-loved faces, it's something that fills me with an enormous sense of achievement. Whoever would have thought I would have a growing catalogue of celebrity insights, from the late Barry Cryer to Jeremy Kyle via Leslie Ash and Shirley Ballas. In this sense, if you have a passion for something, irrespective of the lifestyle implications that it may present, you must pursue it. Of course, it takes a lot of hard work, dedication and sacrifice, but ultimately, in the words of Sheryl Crow, if it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. To me, clarity of thought is so much more powerful than physical strength or precision, and to develop a clear vision to overcome a problem is more significant than being given the solution. In 2018, I walked up Penny Fan for charity. It was this moment when I realized that life isn't about achievement. It's actually what you go through in order to achieve. Therefore, when I reached the top of the mountain, I felt proud. Not that I had walked up a mountain, but it was all the things which had happened as a result. I was fitter, I was stronger, and I had the stamina to help others when transferring me in and out of my wheelchair. This mental reassurance meant far more to me than merely walking up a mountain. It represented ultimate freedom and taught me that, with the right tools, I can achieve anything. I'd like to think that I've taken this philosophy and adapted it to my everyday life. Yet I feel that the hurdles which I currently face are heavily dominated by my ongoing struggle with my own perception of my disability and the vast differences between me and everyone else. It occurred to me that I've been yearning for this sense of freedom my whole life. And while it was never a soaring ambition to walk up a mountain, The release it offered was greater than almost anything I had ever done. It wasn't because I was overcoming the adversity of my disability, which I'm sure was the feeling of many who followed my plight. For me, being upright altered my perception of the world, and it forced me to put high levels of trust in those around me to support me in the right way. The concept of freedom can manifest itself into several different guises. Social freedom, freedom of thought, speech or belief, sexual freedom or financial freedom. Now, I realize that the freedom I experienced on that mountain was a physical one. However, if I adapt that sense of liberation to other areas of my life, then maybe I would be more content with what I've got. If you'd asked me a year earlier, could I have climbed a mountain, I'd have laughed at you. Believe me, I am to physical exertion what Mary Berry is to martial arts. I'm not really interested in exercise. I have a gym membership, but like most of us, find regular excuses not to use it. Yet there was something about the feeling of achievement, be it undertaking the first lap of the sports hall where I was training, or reaching the summit of the mountain, which felt amazing. I felt free. As good as this feeling is, I think almost everyone watching would agree that it will always be trumped by the freedom of thought and expression. This, I would argue, remains the single most important part of an effective society. The best analogy for this is that if you get a group of people in a room who don't speak the same language, and you play them a pop song, each of them will have a similar engagement with it. This in turn would spark a shared experience, and within a few moments they will be communicating with each other through the art of expression. If we can't use our non-verbal communication to tell stories, then hypothetically, we have failed the art of interaction. Obviously, more than most, I arguably understand the significant implications of misunderstanding and the importance of clarity. When I'm talking to someone who doesn't understand my speech, they have two options. Either they can pretend to know what I'm saying, or they can ask me to repeat. Arguably, the former is 10 times less awkward than the latter, but it frequently results in a flawed conversation. Whereas, should they be brave enough to ask me to repeat myself, who knows? We might be able to enjoy something that resembles a normal conversation. There's an old saying that everyone has a book in them. Yet most people become so engrossed in the fickle concept of domestication that they lack the self-confidence to believe that they have something to say. In this sense, I had the huge luxury of finding the time to reflect upon my life and realized that the way people look at me in the street was totally different to the way I felt inside. I knew I had to tell my side of the story. If you're listening to this and thinking, that sounds like me, and if you've got a burning passion to tell your story from your own perspective, then I urge you to just do it. Because, if not now, when? Don't put off things which you're passionate about just because you feel you don't have enough to say. The only way we learn is by hearing different perceptions of universal experience, and I guess that's the reason why I'm here today. So as we slide ever closer to the conclusion of my TED Talk, I hope you're able to realize that what I've discussed is easily transferable onto your own life. Please don't leave feeling sorry for me, because this hasn't been the purpose of this TED Talk, and I guess I would have failed to achieve its goal. Hopefully some of what I've said has resonated with you and might even have challenged your perception of disability. It's very clear that my life is not a mainstream life at all, nor is it a bad life, and for that I'm very proud. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.